If you were to look at a fruit tree, how would you know it's healthy? Most often it's by the quality of its fruit. In John 15 verse 8, Jesus said, "When you produce much fruit, you are my true disciples. This brings great glory to my Father." A healthy tree produces healthy fruit when it's actively doing what it's created to do. In our last episodes, we discussed God's purpose for our work. Each of us has been uniquely created with skills and talents to steward well, using them to help our communities flourish. When we display God's character in all we do, we fulfill our role as citizens of His kingdom. That is a great responsibility for us to uphold. Let's unpack that. Before we go any further, let's define two key terms. Responsibility, the accountability to the work one is called to do. Sacrifice, offering up something desired for a greater cause. Keep those in mind as we go along. Now let's return to the image of the fruit. Think of a farmer. What kinds of responsibilities does he have? He must water, prune, protect, and harvest. Simply knowing what to do isn't enough. If the farmer doesn't act, the crops won't grow. In the same way, knowing about responsibility doesn't make us good stewards. Living it out does. Jesus describes the cost of responsibility in Matthew 16 when he said, "Take up your cross and follow me." The cross represents responsibility, a calling given by the Father, and Jesus gave us the ultimate example of sacrificial living. He came down from heaven to accomplish the work he had been entrusted with, laying aside his own comfort for our salvation. In our own lives and work, we must also be willing to make sacrifices if we are truly responsible with what God has given us. Let's dive into scripture. Luke 22 verse 42 records Jesus praying on the Mount of Olives before he was arrested. "Father, if you are willing to take this cup of suffering away from me, yet I want your will to be done, not mine." Here we see Jesus wrestling with the weight of responsibility. He chose sacrifice over selfishness, obedience over comfort. He knew his responsibility was not to himself, but to his Father, and ultimately to us, placing our salvation above his own desires. As we reflect back on episode 3, we are God's image bearers. Our lives are meant to reflect his perfect love in everything we say and do. Living responsibly means living sacrificially, offering up our desires so that God's greater purpose can be fulfilled. Let's recap today's lesson. A healthy tree is known by its fruit, and we too are known by the fruit of our lives. Responsibility means being faithful with the work God has given us, not just knowing what to do, but acting on it. Sacrifice is often required. Just as Jesus laid down his life, we are called to set aside our own desires for the sake of God's kingdom. Jesus showed us the perfect example of responsibility in Luke 22, where he surrendered his will to the Father's. The takeaway is this: responsibility in God's kingdom isn't about control, it's about obedience. It's about bearing fruit that brings glory to the Father, even when it costs us something. Before we close, here's some questions to reflect on. What characteristics do you see in responsible people? What's the hardest part about picking up your own cross? How does Jesus' prayer in Luke 22 shape the way you think about responsibility? Thank you for joining me today. In our next episode, we'll explore what it means to be called to confidence. See you then.